The courtroom fell silent when the little girl ripped up every page the lawyers had spent months preparing. The billionaire CEO buried her face in her hands as another expensive specialist quietly shook his head and walked away. Everyone believed the child simply refused to communicate. Everyone except one exhausted single father who had wandered into the building carrying nothing more than a worn backpack, a lunchbox, and a heart that had learned to listen long before it learned to speak. Before that ordinary afternoon ended, one handwritten sentence would change every life in the room forever. If you believe kindness can heal wounds that money never could, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel to become part of our community that believes in forgiveness, compassion, and second chances. Rowan Mercer had built one of Europe's fastest-growing technology companies from a tiny rented office into a global empire worth billions. Newspapers admired her brilliance, competitors feared her determination, and investors trusted every decision she made. Yet every magazine photograph carefully cropped away the one truth that followed her everywhere. Standing beside her was her 10-year-old daughter, Celeste, whose silence had become the greatest mystery in the business world. She had never spoken a single word since the day she was born. Doctors filled shelves with reports. Specialists traveled across continents. Therapists promised miracles that never came. Teachers believed she refused to cooperate. Relatives whispered that she lived inside a world nobody else could enter. Rowan spent fortunes trying to unlock the invisible door separating her daughter from everyone around her, but every attempt ended with another expensive disappointment. Celeste was not angry or violent. She simply watched. She observed every face, every movement, every tiny emotion people thought they had hidden. She drew remarkable sketches that captured feelings better than photographs ever could. She remembered every detail of every place she visited. Yet whenever someone demanded words, she folded into herself like a flower closing before a storm. Eventually the world stopped expecting anything from her except silence. Only Rowan refused to surrender. She arranged one final evaluation with an internationally respected communication institute that claimed to specialize in children nobody else understood. Executives canceled meetings so she could attend. Television crews waited outside hoping for another emotional headline about the famous CEO and her mysterious daughter. Rowan ignored every camera. Her only concern was whether this would become one more painful goodbye to hope. Across town, Grant Holloway packed sandwiches into a small lunchbox for his 8-year-old son, Owen. Since losing his wife to illness 4 years earlier, every sunrise had begun with the same quiet promise that somehow they would make it through another day together. Grant repaired office furniture for a living. The pay barely covered rent, school supplies, and groceries, but Owen never complained. His father taught him that kindness was something people could always afford. That afternoon Grant received an emergency call from the Communication Institute. A delivery company had accidentally damaged several therapy rooms, and the building manager desperately needed someone to repair broken furniture before visiting families arrived. Grant accepted immediately because extra work meant extra food on the table. Since school had closed early, Owen came along carrying his favorite sketchbook. The waiting room overflowed with anxious parents, medical professionals, and administrators. Grant quietly unpacked his tools while Owen sat near a window drawing birds soaring through bright afternoon skies. Celeste noticed him almost immediately. Unlike the adults surrounding her, Owen never stared. He simply smiled politely before returning to his drawing. Rowan watched another expert attempt another familiar strategy. Flashcards covered the table. Electronic devices produced cheerful sounds. Rewards waited inside colorful boxes. Every technique ended exactly the same way. Celeste lowered her eyes and remained perfectly silent. Frustration spread across the room like heavy fog. Someone suggested stronger behavioral programs. Another recommended residential treatment. One specialist gently admitted that perhaps expectations should be lowered permanently. Rowan's shoulders sank beneath years of disappointment. She loved her daughter more than her own success, yet even love felt powerless against endless misunderstanding. During a short break, Grant carefully carried a repaired chair past the conference room. He noticed Celeste sitting alone near a large window while everyone argued about reports behind closed doors. She wasn't crying. She was tracing invisible circles on the glass as sunlight warmed her face. Grant did not approach with sympathy or curiosity. He simply noticed something nobody else seemed to see. Every time adults spoke about Celeste, they looked at one another instead of looking at her. He found a small notepad in his toolbox and quietly wrote one simple sentence. "I will wait until you are ready." Without expecting a response, he folded the paper once and placed it on the table before returning to his work. No promises. No questions. No pressure. Just one sentence. Several minutes passed. Then something astonishing happened. Celeste slowly unfolded the paper again. She read the sentence 3 times. Her hands trembled, not with fear but with recognition. For the first time that entire day, she looked directly into another person's eyes. Grant smiled gently from across the hallway and continued tightening screws without asking anything from her. She reached for a pencil. Everyone assumed she would draw another picture. Instead, she carefully wrote 4 words beneath Grant's sentence. "Thank you for waiting." The room froze. Doctors stared in disbelief. Rowan blinked repeatedly, convinced exhaustion had created an impossible dream. Tears gathered before she even realized she was crying. Her daughter had communicated. Not because someone demanded performance, but because someone removed the burden of expectation. The specialists rushed forward, eager to analyze the breakthrough, but Grant quietly raised his hand. For once, everyone stopped talking. Celeste continued writing. She explained that words had always lived inside her mind. She heard everything. She understood everything. What frightened her was the pressure filling every conversation. Every adult expected immediate responses. Every question felt like standing beneath a collapsing mountain. Silence became the only safe place she had left. The harder people pushed, the deeper she disappeared. Grant recognized the feeling because grief had once done the same to him. After his wife died, neighbors constantly asked whether he was coping, whether Owen was coping, whether everything would be all right. Eventually he had stopped answering because every conversation demanded emotions he wasn't ready to express. Healing only began when one elderly neighbor sat beside him without asking a single question. He had simply passed that gift forward. Over the following weeks, Rowan invited Grant to continue visiting the institute, not as a therapist but as a trusted friend. Owen and Celeste spent sunny afternoons drawing together in the garden outside the building. They invented games requiring patience instead of speed. They laughed through shared sketches and handwritten notes. Gradually Celeste wrote longer thoughts. Then she pointed. Then she nodded. Every tiny step mattered because each belonged entirely to her. Rowan began questioning more than her daughter's treatment. She realized she had unknowingly managed motherhood the same way she managed corporations. Every problem demanded immediate solutions. Every delay felt like failure. She loved fiercely but hurried constantly. Watching Grant patiently repair broken furniture one careful screw at a time taught her something every business award had failed to teach. Hearts never healed according to quarterly deadlines. News eventually spread about Celeste's remarkable progress, but Rowan refused television interviews celebrating miracle recoveries. There had been no miracle. There had only been respect. She instead funded communication centers where children could express themselves through art, writing, movement, or silence until they felt safe enough to choose their own voices. Grant expected nothing in return. He continued repairing desks and chairs, collecting Owen after school, and living the simple life he had always known. One bright afternoon Rowan invited both father and son to visit the company's headquarters. Employees expected another formal executive announcement. Instead they watched their CEO stand before hundreds of workers holding the folded piece of paper that had changed her family forever. She explained that billion-pound businesses succeeded because people felt heard. Yet somehow she had forgotten that truth inside her own home. Success without listening became another form of loneliness. She announced new company policies supporting employees caring for children with different communication needs, flexible family schedules, and mental health programs built around compassion instead of productivity alone. The applause lasted several minutes, but Grant remained quietly uncomfortable with attention. Celeste noticed and smiled before writing another note. Heroes don't always stand on stages. Grant laughed softly. Months later, during a sunny community art festival sponsored by Rowan's Foundation, hundreds of families filled the park with paintings, music, handmade crafts, and hopeful conversations. Children who once believed they were invisible proudly displayed artwork telling stories beyond spoken language. Parents exchanged encouragement instead of advice. Nobody measured progress against impossible expectations. Near one colorful display stood Celeste beside a large canvas. Across its center she had painted a small folded piece of paper glowing like sunlight. Beneath it she carefully wrote the sentence that had unlocked her courage. "I will wait until you are ready." Visitors stopped reading and quietly wiped away tears. Before this story comes to its close, leave a meaningful comment sharing one moment when patience or kindness changed someone's life, because your experience may become the encouragement another person desperately needs today. As the festival ended beneath a warm afternoon sky, Rowan realized that her greatest achievement would never appear on financial reports. It was seeing her daughter walk confidently through a crowd without fear. Grant looked at Owen with quiet pride, knowing his son had also learned that strength often sounded like gentle silence instead of loud applause. Celeste still spoke very little, but she no longer believed silence meant being alone. She had discovered something even more powerful than words. She had found people willing to stay. If this story touched your heart, please like this video, leave a meaningful comment, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to our channel so you never miss another emotional journey. Remember that the smallest act of patience can become the key that unlocks a heart everyone else has given up trying to understand. Sometimes the sentence that changes a life is not the longest or the cleverest. Sometimes it is simply the promise that someone will stay, listen, and wait until another soul is finally ready to be heard.